First graders, it is Thursday. Thanks for tuning in. Summer is around the corner. In fact, it even feels like summer on some of these really nice days. Since summer's coming, I thought, you know what? The second Boxcar Children book is perfect. Look at it. I mean, in the summer, you're close to the water, or maybe you're on the water. Maybe you go to a lake. Maybe you travel to the ocean. Maybe you go on a boat. If you don't do any of those things, well, maybe you play with your hose. Maybe you have a little pool that you fill up, or maybe your parents bought like a pool. That's awesome. Or maybe you have a relative that has a pool. I feel like this book is perfect with summer right around the corner. So we're going to jump into the Boxcar Children. Number 2, Surprise Island. All right. Like I said, this is the second book in the series. If you weren't here for the first book that I already read, basically, these children started out homeless, and they lived in an abandoned boxcar for a while, and eventually they found out that their grandpa was this awesome guy who happens to be rich. So he brought the boxcar from the abandoned railroad to his mansion, brought the boxcar that the kids lived in. They're living in the mansion. They're probably having a good time. They got to keep the dog that they found. So we're going to find out where their adventure takes them this time in number 2, Surprise Island. I'm excited for this one. Oh yeah, that's good. Thank you, Spider-Man. Surprise Island. This book is a little longer, so it's perfect that I'm starting it this week. We'll probably end up reading it all next week as well. There we go. Chapter 1, The First Surprise. That is an anchor, if you didn't already know. You drop that off a boat, and it keeps the boat from floating too far away from where you are. It's almost like putting the parking brake on in the car. Except for your boat will still float a little bit around. Now, tell us, grandfather, cried Henry. We ran all the way home from school. Tell us, shouted Benny, throwing himself down on the grass beside the log. School is out for the whole summer. See what I mean? Perfect timing. School is out for the whole summer, and Watch wants to know, the dog. Violet and I want to know too, said Jessie. Mr. Alden was sitting in the garden reading. He looked at his 4 grandchildren in surprise. Let me see. Was this the day I said I'd tell you? He asked them. He's joking, Benny, said Jessie. Joking? Cried Mr. Alden. I mean everything I say. I wonder if he's being sarcastic now. But he was joking. Just the same, and enjoying himself too. In the spring, he had promised his grandchildren a surprise for the summer. And now, he had been waiting more than an hour for the children to come home. School is out, said Violet. We ran all the way home, shouted Benny. Yes, so you said, Mr. Alden said. You said the surprise was something you liked to do yourself when you were 15, Henry told him. Yes, or even 6, said Mr. Alden, looking at Benny. And you said you'd tell us the minute school was out, grandfather, said Benny. Mr. Alden laughed. I certainly did, he replied. And now I'm going to tell you. The 4 children looked at him. He began. Once upon a time, my father bought an island. He bought one? Cried Henry. Yes, Mr. Alden went on. The island was small. Picture. There is nothing much on it except a small house, a barn, a fisherman's hut. My father wanted a quiet place to keep his best horses. Old Captain Daniel, who runs the motorboat, lives in the fisherman's hut now. Let's all go down to the island and look it over. If you want to stay there all summer, you may. So wait, his father used to keep horses on that island? Imagine the size of boat you need to get the horses to the island. He must have a big boat, or his grandfather did. Oh, grandfather, cried Jessie. We would like it better than anything in the world. It would be just like the boxcar days. Couldn't Watch go too? Asked Benny, with his hand on the dog's head. Certainly, said Mr. Alden. He would be lonesome without you. Can we have a real stove and cook? Asked Violet. You'll have to cook, replied Mr. Alden, if you want to eat. I will give you some money for dishes and things. You must tell me how much money you need, but don't make it too much. All the children laughed a little because even Benny knew that their grandfather had enough money to buy anything they wanted. Let's go now, Benny said. The four children jumped so quickly that Mr. Alden threw back his head and laughed. We will go in the car as far as the ocean, he said. Then Captain Daniel will take us in the motorboat across to the island. We might stop and get Dr. Moore, excuse me, and his mother to come along and enjoy the fun. It's the doctor's day off. Cool, the doctor's still in the story? The children were delighted, for Dr. Moore and his mother were their best friends. Dr. Moore did not look at all surprised when they came. He helped his mother into the big car, and off they all went toward the ocean. On the way, Jessie and Violet began to plan their housekeeping. We have to buy bread and bottles of milk, said Jessie, then we could live, even if we didn't have anything else to eat. Here's a little book and a pen, said Mr. Alden, taking a small blue book from his pocket. Write down the dishes we need, said Violet. Before they reached the ocean, Jessie had put down all the things they could think of. There were spoons, cups, bowls, plates, and a sharp knife, a dishpan, and a big kettle. Then they saw the ocean and the Alden motorboat tied up at the small dock. Captain Daniel, the old fisherman, was waiting for them on the dock. How are you, Captain? Said Mr. Alden as they shook hands. Just take us across to the island. If the children don't like it, you can bring us right back again. Oh, what is wrong with me this morning? All these yawns. I got plenty of sleep, too. What's my problem? That's my problem. Excuse me. All right. The children shouted at this. We'll like it all right, he said. They climbed into the boat and were off. There's our island, cried Henry. Our very own island. Benny began to wave. There's nobody there, Benny. Why are you waving? Asked Grandfather. In spite of this, all the children began to wave at the island. Here's the picture. Hold it steady. There we go. And the island is actually on the next page. Whoop. You can see there's the buildings and then the shore. And there's our little house, shouted Benny. But is it big enough for all of us? Oh no, said Captain Daniel. That little hut is my house. He laughed and looked at Mr. Alden. They landed at the little dock and walked a short way before they saw a small yellow house. Are we going to live in that yellow house? Cried Jessie. Oh no, answered Mr. Alden. You children are going to live in the barn. In the barn, shouted the children as they ran over to it. This is the best idea I've ever heard, cried Henry. I thought they were going to be like, what? Seriously? He opened the big door and looked in. A new floor had been laid, but the children did not notice it. All of them were looking at the 4 box stalls along the back of the room. Bedrooms, cried Benny, pointing to the box stalls. That's what they are, said Henry, opening one of the swinging doors to look in. Each stall had a large window and nothing else at all. Let's bring down some straw for beds, said Henry, looking up at the stairs. We can cover the straw with blankets. He pointed to a pile of clean, light brown blankets. Jessie ran over to look at the little stove. It was new, and there was an oven top. Then Henry walked over to look at some barrels. Hey, here are 2 empty barrels, he shouted. We could use them for table legs and lay this long board across them for a table. Wonderful, said Jessie. The older people stood in the doorway. the adults, watching the excited children. I'm glad the workmen left these old boxes here, said Henry. I could make dozens of things out of that wood. Maybe a little cupboard for the dishes. Oh, Henry, do you think you could? Cried Violet. We wouldn't need doors. Of course he could, said Benny. We could make doors too. Henry can make anything. There's a little spring over there, said Mr. Alden, taking the children to the window to look. That spring never runs dry. It is always as cold as ice, even on very hot days, and it is safe to drink too. So spring is like a little tiny river. Isn't this perfect, Henry? Said Jessie. The most important things are settled already. Oh, I wish I could stay here tonight. How about dishes? Asked Violet. Jessie said, we can get spoons and things at the 5 and 10. 5 and 10 must be the store. Are there any dishes already on the island, Grandfather? Not a dish except for what the captain has, replied Mr. Alden. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry, cried Jessie. It's lots more fun to buy them. Let's get 6 of each thing. Then we can have company. There's still time to go back into the mainland. To the mainland. Mainland would be like off the island back to the big land. Mainland. We could go to the 5 and 10 for dishes, and we could buy bread and milk for supper. And I want my bear, said Benny. Very well, my children, said Mr. Alden, smiling. You shall go back and get your things and stay here this very night. But just then, Mr. Alden noticed that Captain Daniel had something on his mind. Did you want something, Captain? He asked. Well, yes, said Captain Daniel. I heard you say I was the only one on the island. Well, aren't you? Mr. Alden looked at him. No, I'm not. I've got a young friend staying with me in my hut. I thought I'd better tell you. He's been a good man, handy and all, but he hasn't been well. What's the matter with him? Who is he? Asked Mr. Alden sharply, just as Captain Daniel knew he would. I've known him all my life, said Captain Daniel. Then he looked at Dr. Moore for help. Suppose I go down to the hut and talk with this man. Fine, said Mr. Alden. You go and see what this is all about. I want to go with you, said Benny. Oh, no, said the doctor. You go look in the windows of the yellow house and see what you can see. I'll be right back. So the children went over to look into every window while Dr. Moore went off with Captain Daniel to see his friend. Chapter 2, Housekeeping. Thank you for coming, Doctor, said Captain Daniel. As they walked toward the fisherman's hut, you will see that it's all right. Soon they came to the hut. A young man sat in the door, fixing a lobster pot. Hello, he said, looking up. Hello, replied Dr. Moore. I'm a doctor, and I thought I would come to see you. Mr. Alden is leaving for his 4 grandchildren on the island with Captain Daniel. The young man smiled. Yes, I know, he said. I'm glad you came. He's a very handy man, Joe is, put in Captain Daniel. He's a big help to me. I'd like to tell you about myself, said the young man. Please sit down a minute. Here he is, right here. I used to live around here, he went on. Last year, I went off to explore a place and dug up old Indian things. One day, I fell from a very high rock and broke my arm. For a long time, I didn't know who I was. Now, do you remember who you are? Asked Dr. Moore. Yes, I think I'll tell you. The young man whispered a name. You can't mean it, cried Dr. Moore. How strange. Who found you after you fell? So, he told the doctor his name, and the doctor's like, oh, no, I wonder who he is. I wonder if it's a well-known person. An old Indian found me and took me to his hut. He took care of me and got a doctor to fix my arm. I came here to Captain Daniel as soon as I could remember who I was. Why didn't you go right back to your home? Asked Dr. Moore. Because I wanted to be perfectly well before I went home. You see, I used to live with my uncle. It didn't seem right for me to go back home until I was sure that I was well again. I see, said Dr. Moore. Come over someday to see me and tell me some more. I will look at your arm then. It is almost well, said the young man. Good, said Dr. Moore. You are doing the right thing. You should stay here and help Dr. Daniel. Captain Daniel. Dr. Daniel. You will like the 4 children when you get to know them. I'm sure I shall, said the young man. You won't tell anyone but me about me, will you? No, I won't, promised the doctor. I will say that you are Captain Daniel's old friend and a handyman. The children can call you Joe. Right, said Joe. My middle name is Joseph anyway. Dr. Moore and Captain Daniel went back to the barn, leaving the strange handyman still fixing the lobster pot. Do you feel better now, Captain? Asked the doctor. I should say so. Thanks for fixing it up. The stranger was all right, Mr. Alden, said Dr. Moore. Joe is a very fine fellow. He's very handy, and Captain Daniel has known him all his life. Mr. Alden asked, You are sure, then, that everything is all right? Yes, said the doctor. The children will like Joe. I want to go and see Joe, said Benny. Not now, cried Henry. We haven't had time. Don't you remember we are going back to the mainland to buy groceries and dishes? Of course I remember, said Benny. I've been waiting and waiting. Captain Daniel took them back to the mainland. The doctor and his mother left the others at the store. We had a wonderful time seeing you and your new home, said Mrs. Moore. May we come again? Asked Dr. Moore with a twinkle in his eye. You know you may, said Jessie, smiling back. Come any time after we get some dishes. Come on, Jessie, said Benny. Let's buy things. Right, said Jessie, and they all went into the store. They walked straight to the piles of cooking dishes. We're going to get a lot of dishes, said Jessie. May we have a big box first so that we can put the things into it as we find them? Certainly, said the girl. How's this one? Is it big enough? That's fine, said Henry. Look, Jessie. See that big pail? We ought to have 2. I was just seeing how many pages are left in the chapter. We ought to have 2. One for drinking water and one for dishwater. That's a good idea, said Jessie. I hope we won't forget anything. Soon they had everything they wanted. It's 4 o'clock, said Henry. Let's go up to the house and get our swimming suits and towels. And my bear, cried Benny. We will get your bear if we don't get anything else, said Jessie. I think we'll have to pack another box at the house, said Henry. Let's pack old clothes, said Jessie. We certainly don't want to wear these school clothes. I should say not, said Henry. We couldn't explore an island with good clothes on. Are you going to explore? Asked Benny. Yes, Benny, said Violet. I'm going to take my paints and my pictures of things we find. And make pictures of things we find. Good, cried Henry, who liked Violet's little pictures very much. By this time they had come to the house. Let's find what we want to take, said Henry, and bring it to Jessie's room. Mrs. McGregor, the housekeeper, also known as a maid, met them at the door and said, Jessie, don't you want to see what Mr. Alden has bought before you pack your things? Bought? Yes, indeed, replied Jessie. Upstairs on Jessie's bed was a big pile of new play clothes. There were 4 pairs of brown shoes, too. 4 pairs? Just think of grandfather's getting all these, cried Jessie. Just what we need. Let's each put on one of these suits and not take any school clothes at all. Oh, the shoes were 1 for each of them. I thought Henry got 4 shoes to himself. I was like, man, that's a lot of shoes for the summer. I like my new shoes, said Benny. He sat down on the floor and began to take off his old shoes at once. Mr. Alden smiled as he sat alone downstairs in his big chair and listened to the happy shouting. Now for the packing box, said Henry. Wait, said Jessie. Don't bring the box up here. Each one of us can carry some things downstairs. I'll take the towels and my tools, said Henry. Violet and I will carry the work bag, paints, and the swimming suits and the other clothes, said Jessie. Benny can bring the flashlight and the rest of the things. They all went downstairs with their arms full. Now, did we forget anything? Asked Jessie. We forgot my bear, I guess, said Benny, who had come downstairs again with a funny-looking animal in his hand. He laid his bear beside the box. There he is. The most important thing of all, cried Jessie, packing the bear carefully in the box. We're ready to go, Grandfather, said Henry, when the bear was added to the box. Are you sure you won't be lonesome? Thank you, my boy. No, indeed, said Mr. Alden quickly. He knew the children would not go at all unless he were careful. I wouldn't go with you if I could. I need a little rest without any children or dogs around. The children did not need to look up to see the twinkle in his eye, for they knew very well that he liked to have them near him. You won't hear Watch bark at the milkman for a long time, said Benny. Milkman, so back in the day, not that long ago, but maybe the 50s, maybe the 1960s, but I know the 50s and the 40s and before that, people used to have a milkman, a man that used to deliver, maybe a woman, I don't know if there were women that did it, but they called him a milkman, that would deliver milk to your door, kind of like the mail. I don't know if you'd get it every day, maybe, depending on how much milk you went through. But yeah, they used to deliver the milk. Really? Isn't that crazy? It's kind of cool, honestly. That's back when milk came in a glass jug, too. You won't hear the watch bark of the milkman for a long time, said Benny. What shall I do, Benny? Asked his grandfather. I shall miss the barking and noise in the morning. Goodbye, called everyone as the car started. Mr. Alden and Mrs. McGregor waved until the car was out of sight. They're wonderful children, said Mrs. McGregor. They are very clever, and yet they're never too busy to be kind to everybody. Even little Benny now. Don't forget to say goodbye to the cook. Thank you, Mrs. McGregor, said Mr. Alden. That means a lot to me because you know them so well. He smiled as he went to the big chair, back to his big chair. He wanted to think about the children as they went across the island into their new home. The children got out of the car at the dock. Don't you forget that bread and milk, Jessie, said Benny. Oh my, cried Jessie. There's only a couple pages left, so if you're like, this is long, we're almost done, you can pause it if you need to. Yep, just a couple pages. Oh my, cried Jessie. We almost went over without anything to eat. How lucky we are to have a store so near this dock. Let's get lots of bread and milk. If we have bread and milk, we can live without anything else. I have to have my vegetables, said Benny. Of course, said Jessie, laughing. We'll have lots of other things. I want my supper now, Jessie, said Benny. I don't want to hear any more talking about it. Jessie laughed. I'm glad you are so hungry, Benny, she said. I almost forgot to buy our supper. It's only 6 o'clock. We can have supper ready in an hour. Here comes Henry with the bread and milk. I can't wait an hour, said Benny. I have to go to bed in an hour because Mrs. McGregor said so. Not tonight, Mr. Benny, said Henry, laughing. Captain Daniel put the boxes in the boat and started the motor. In a very short time, they came to the island, and Captain Daniel helped the children carry the boxes into the barn. Good luck, said Captain Daniel as he set down the last box. I hope you will like your new home. Oh, we shall, Jessie called after him, and thank you. You have been so kind to us. Now, said Henry, let's get to work. Oh, isn't this exciting, cried Jessie. You open the boxes, and Benny and I will set up the table. What a noise they made. Henry took off the cover of the box. The others pulled out the barrels and laid the wide board across them. Then the whole family unpacked the blue and white dishes. We'll wash 4 bowls and 4 spoons, said Jessie. We won't heat water to wash all the dishes tonight. It is lucky that Captain Daniel brought us a little water. No, said Violet. We can't put things away until we have a dish cupboard. Tomorrow, laughed Henry. I will make that dish cupboard the very first thing. Violet piled the bread on a plate, while Jessie put 2 bottles of milk on the table. So, with packing boxes for chairs, the 4 children sat down. They put the bread into the bowls and poured the cold milk over it. With their new spoons, they began to eat their first delicious supper in their new home. Here they are, eating. Full-page picture. We must get something for Watch to eat, said Henry as the dog ate 2 big slices of the bread. How many pieces of bread may I have, Jessie? Asked Benny. All you want, cried both Jessie and Henry. When supper was over, Jessie got up so suddenly that her chair went over. Let's wash these dishes right away, she said, and then make our beds. So the children started for the spring. The little river. They started for the spring, each with a bowl and spoon. They soon saw the water from the spring came up into a barrel and ran over the top. The stream ran into the woods. We had better wash the dishes in the stream because we may want to drink the water in the barrel, said Henry. As he waited for the others, he thought he saw a vegetable garden on the other side of the house. He could not see very well because it was getting dark. A funny thing to find on an island, he thought to himself. I'm going to bring down my own bed myself, said Benny, starting back to the barn. I want the stall right next to Jessie's for my bedroom. He's sleepy, said Jessie, looking at her little watch. It's 8 o'clock, and I'm sleepy too. After all the children were in bed, Jessie sat up suddenly and listened. She heard a sleepy little voice saying over and over, Jessie, I want my bear. I want my bear. She got up at once. With the flashlight, she soon found the funny-looking animal in the packing box and took it to Benny. When Jesse woke again, it was morning. All right, that's the only chapters I'm going to read, the first 2 chapters. Thanks for tuning in. I hope to see you tonight at our Zoom meeting. Yes, I will see you then.